Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Air Craftsman Simon Tagaloa. We warmly welcome the family of Flying Officer Stanley James Bethel, whose story will be told shortly. We're also honoured to welcome Vice Admiral Thomas Roden, Commander, Naval Surface Forces, United States of America, and Mr Qadir Jawad, Deputy Minister of Finance and Administration, Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock, Afghanistan. We're also very pleased to welcome members of the Royal Military College, classes of 1956, 1963 through to 1966 and 1976. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors. Could I ask you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem? If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for over a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we pay tribute to Flying Officer Stanley Bethell, who was killed on active service with the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. Stanley James Bethell was born on the 18th of February, 1920, to Thomas and Miriam Bethell of Rockdale, New South Wales. One of 3 children, Stanley had a brother, Robert, and a sister, Anne. Stanley enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 21st of June, 1941. The following month, on the 19th of July, his brother Robert also enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force. Following enlistment, Stanley Bethell began training as a bomb aimer and before long had embarked for overseas service. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 Royal Australian Air Force pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who throughout the course of the war joined squadrons based in Britain. After arriving in Britain, Bethell undertook further specialist training before being posted to 460 Squadron, flying 2 twin-engine Vickers Wellington medium bombers and then 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bombers. And the squadron consisted of Australian, British, Canadians, New Zealanders and South Africans. It was the most highly decorated Australian squadron in Bomber Command, and the squadron that suffered the highest casualties, losing over 1,000 men. Almost 600 Australians from 460 Squadron are listed on the Roll of Honour. On the 10th of June 1944, Stanley's brother Robert, who was posted to 97 Squadron, Royal Air Force, and was also serving aboard Lancasters, was shot down during an operation over France. Robert survived, but spent the rest of the war as a prisoner of war. In late 1944, Stanley married Kathleen Haynes, a member of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force stationed at Royal Air Force Binbrook, where 460 Squadron was based. Together they had a daughter, Patricia Ann, born in 1945. Stanley was not to meet her. Towards the end of his second tour, on the 12th of December 1944, the Lancaster in which Stanley was the bomber aimer was shot down by a flak during a raid on Essen in Germany. Bethell and all 6 of his fellow crewmates were killed in action. He was 24 years old. He is buried nearby his fellow crewmates in British and Commonwealth Rexwood Forest War Cemetery at Cleve in Germany. Following the war in 1947, his widow Miriam and young daughter Patricia Ann travelled to Australia to meet Stanley's family and stayed permanently. Stanley Bethell's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of courage and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flying Officer Stanley James Bethell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that remained grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you a very good evening. Thank you.